In this recording, we're going to work on your practice exam, problem number 3. This problem is on job order costing. We have Speedy Auto Repairs uses a job order costing system. The company's direct materials consist of replacement parts installed in customer vehicles, and its direct labor consists of the mechanic's hourly wages. Speedy's overhead costs include various items, such as the shop manager's salary, depreciation of equipment, utilities, insurance, and magazine subscriptions and refreshments for the waiting room. The company applies all of its overhead costs to job based on direct labor hours. At the beginning of the year, it made the following estimates. So we have our direct labor hours required to support estimated output, fixed overhead cost, and variable overhead cost per direct labor hour. So, requirement 1, we're supposed to compute the predetermined overhead rate. Requirement 2, cost out one particular job. And requirement 3, calculate the selling price using a markup. So we learned in the previous problem for requirement 1 that the predetermined overhead rate is just the estimated overhead divided by the estimated base. So we actually have two ways to calculate the overhead here, and they're both mathematically equivalent. I'll work on the first way first, and then I'll show you the second way. So the first thing that we have to do is calculate the total estimated overhead. So our total estimated overhead is going to be the variable overhead plus the fixed overhead. So our total estimated overhead, the variable overhead is $1 per direct labor hour. Multiply that by the 20,000 direct labor hours. Once again, I'm just looking at the 3 lines over here of the estimates. Right over here, I'm just looking at those 3 lines. So that's my variable overhead. And then I just add my fixed overhead, which was given in the problem, of $350,000. So that's going to equal a total of $370,000 of estimated overhead. 1 times 20,000 is 20,000, and then I add 350,000. So my total estimated overhead, 1 times 20,000 is 20,000, plus 350,000. So I'll do the formula in here. I'll calculate 1 times 20,000, and then add 350,000, and notice we get our 370,000. So to get our predetermined overhead rate, we just take the estimated overhead, which is 370,000. We divide it by the estimated base, which is 20,000 direct labor hours. And we get $18.50 per direct labor hour. Now, mathematically, you could have also figured it out. It should be way, not was. The fixed overhead per unit is 350,000 divided by 20,000. So I have a rate of $17.50. The variable overhead is $1. So adding the two together, Notice I get the same $18.50. So our predetermined overhead rate in part 1, $18.50 per direct labor hour. Notice I read the instructions. Write round your answer to 2 decimal places. Now that I have the $18.50 per direct labor hour, we're going to move on to requirement number 2. So notice how the direct materials and the direct labor cost is given in the problem. This is very common with job order costing because, as I said, you just fix your accounting system so that as you requisition the direct materials, you know what job it goes to. And as you incur the direct labor costs, you also code that for jobs. So you automatically know that just from your accounting system. So now all we have to do is figure out the overhead applied to the job. Well, our overhead is $18.50 per direct labor hour. And this job, particular job in part 2, had 6 hours used. So it's going to get 6 hours of overhead at $18.50 per direct labor hour. So the only thing we need from part 2 is our overhead applied, which is going to be the direct labor hours used in the job, multiplied by our overhead application rate. So in this case, we're going to take our 6 direct labor hours, multiply it by the $18.50 per direct labor hour, and the overhead applied to this job, 6 times $18.50, is going to give us $111. So for this job, the direct materials are given as $590. The direct labor is given as $109. And we just calculated the overhead applied as $111. Let me type that in correctly. So we have a total cost for the job of $810. Now let's move on to part 3. So in part 3, if Speedy establishes its selling prices using a markup percentage of 40% of its total job cost, then how much would it have charged Mr. Wilkes? So basically, in using a markup, we take the total cost of the job, add the markup, and then when we do that, we get to the total price of the job, what we're going to charge the customer. So we just calculated, and the computer said it's correct, that the cost of the job is $810. So they said the markup percentage is 40% of total cost. So to calculate the markup percentage, I take 810 and I multiply that by 40%. So 810 multiplied by 0.4 or 40%, either one, will give us $324. So if we take the cost of the job and add the markup, we get to the total price of the job. We're going to charge the customer $1,134. So the amount charged to Mr. Wilkes, $1,134. Check my work. And we're done with problem 3.